Lynn Reed's fingers froze on the cold rim of his iced bubble tea cup the second the bank alert lit up his phone screen. The chill of the plastic seeped upward through his fingertips, traveling slow and icy through his veins until it clamped tight around his heart, stealing the warmth from his chest and leaving him breathless, suspended in a split second of utter disbelief. The mid-June sun blazed through the cafe's floor-to-ceiling glass, flooding the space with sticky, oppressive heat, yet Lynn felt nothing but a cold numbness crawling across his skin, every trivial sound of the busy shop fading into a distant, meaningless hum. XX Bank, account ending in XXXX, received a wire transfer of $14,000 on June 12th. Current balance, $14,066. $14,000. Not $1,400, not a trivial 140. 14,000 for crisp, unyielding zeros lined up in perfect, mocking order on his screen. A numerical anomaly so absurd it might as well have been a cruel practical joke tailor-made to unravel his fragile, carefully balanced life. For 4 years, Lynn had existed in the quiet, uncelebrated grind of a warehouse supervisor at Bright Horizon Building Materials, trapped in a dead-end role that paid a meager $500 a month. With federal insurance contributions locked at the absolute minimum legal threshold. His days were an endless loop of counting tile pallets, cross-referencing shipping manifests, arguing with gruff delivery drivers over minor surface damage claims, and restocking endless rows of construction hardware. Monotonous, unglamorous labor that wore down his body but never dimmed his quiet sense of responsibility. At 29, he had nothing to show for half a decade of steady work. His bank account had never once climbed above $850. He lived in a cramped, aging studio apartment on the city's working-class fringe, drove a beat-up 5-year-old electric bike, and carried the weight of his family's struggles entirely on his own shoulders. Just 2 months prior, his mother had undergone emergency gallbladder surgery, a sudden medical crisis that had drained his last savings and forced him to scramble to borrow nearly $1,700 from friends and coworkers. He still owed his colleague Paul $420, a small debt that lingered over him like a persistent shadow, a constant reminder of how precarious his life truly was. Poverty was not just a circumstance for Lynn, it was a quiet, daily companion, shaping every choice, every sacrifice, every quiet compromise he made to survive. "Your bubble tea's ready, sir." The cafe clerk's cheerful voice cut through his stupor, sliding the frosty cup across the counter toward him. Lynn did not move. His grip on his phone tightened until his knuckles blanched bone white, the glowing digits of his new balance burning into his retinas like an indelible brand. His mind spiraled through frantic, disjointed hypotheses, each one more unsettling than the last. First, scam, a sophisticated bank phishing scheme preying on desperate, overworked people like him. Second, a catastrophic system glitch, a random banking error that would inevitably reverse itself and leave him facing unexplainable penalties he could never afford to pay. Third, the thought he dared not linger on, the one that curdled cold dread deep in his gut, corporate funds, mistakenly deposited into his personal account, a windfall that would never belong to someone like him. He spun on his heel and bolted from the air-conditioned cafe, abandoning his drink entirely, mounting his dented electric bike and speeding toward Bright Horizon's industrial compound. The scorching summer wind whipped against his face, gritty with construction dust and street heat, stinging his cheeks while his blurry reflection in the dusty rearview mirror revealed a face drained of all color, his brows locked in a tight, anxious furrow. A street vendor shouted boisterous watermelon sales pitches as he raced past the roadside market. Families laughed and bartered in the crowds, and the entire world hummed with ordinary summer contentment, yet Lynn heard none of it. His entire consciousness narrowed to the terrifying unknown of that unexplained, impossible deposit. Bright Horizon Building Materials occupied a worn, rented floor in a faded office complex tucked behind the city's East Side Construction Supply District, a neighborhood of aging warehouses, potholed asphalt lots, and peeling commercial signage. Lynn skidded to a halt in the employee charging lot, kicked down his bike's kickstand with a sharp, trembling kick, and sprinted up the concrete stairwell 3 steps at a time. The stairwell reeked of damp cement, stagnant air, and fine construction dust, old tile sales posters peeling yellowed and faded from the cinder block walls, mirroring the worn, unremarkable routine of his daily existence. The finance office sat at the far end of the second-floor hallway, its door propped open to let in a thin stream of stale hallway air. Chloe Bennett, the junior part-time cashier, was slouched lazily at her desk, shelling sunflower seeds and scrolling mindlessly through her computer, her posture relaxed and unconcerned. She barely lifted her eyes as Lynn burst breathlessly into the room, her tone lazy and dismissive. "Lynn? Your paycheck hit yesterday. You already blowing your whole check on something?" "I got a deposit," Lynn forced out, struggling to steady the tremor in his voice, his heart hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. $14,000. Transferred straight from the company's corporate account. I need to check if it's a mistake. Chloe's casual seed-shelling motion froze instantly. She finally lifted her head, genuine surprise flashing across her face for a split second before melting into a knowing, amused condescension, the quiet, gossipy glee of someone who'd just spotted a peer stumbling into an unforeseen trap they could see clearly. She held out a hand for his phone, squinting at the banking screen for a long, deliberate moment before stifling a snort, her shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. 14 grand? Wow, you really hit the lucky streak, huh? She handed the phone back, her tone thick with unspoken implication, every word laced with hidden meaning Lynn could not yet decipher. You need to talk to Mrs. Shaw about this. She's out doing warehouse inventory right now. Head over there, she'll sort it out for you. A heavy, suffocating dread settled over Lynn's chest at the name. Susan Shaw, the company's head of finance, had worked at Bright Horizon for 20 unbroken years, serving as the CEO's most trusted, unshakable right hand. Office folklore had long cemented an unspoken rule across every department. If Mrs. Shaw approved a request, company funds flowed freely without hesitation. If she denied it, not a single cent moved, no matter who asked. She was the gatekeeper of every dollar in the business, perceptive, unyielding, impossibly hard to read, and intimately aware of every employee's hidden struggles and secrets. Lynn turned and trundled back toward the stairs, his steps far heavier and slower than they had been minutes before, the initial rush of panic fading into a slow, gnawing unease. As he rounded the concrete landing, he nearly collided head-on with Jason Hayes, one of the company's top-performing sales representatives. Jason was immaculately dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair slicked back with expensive pomade, an unlit cigarette permanently clamped between his fingers, a deliberate affectation he swore lent him executive sales authority, even though he never smoked indoors or on company property. "Whoa, slow down there, Lynn." Jason flashed his signature bright, practiced salesman's grin, white teeth polished and sharp, his tone warm and familiar on the surface. "Heard you've been stretched pretty thin financially lately. Let me treat you to dinner tonight, my treat, you could use a break." "I can't. I've got urgent work to handle," Lynn replied, stepping sideways to slip past him, desperate to escape the conversation. Jason blocked his path with a casual, deliberate step, his friendly smile never faltering, but his voice dropping to a low, murky whisper sharp with quiet warning. "No need to rush. Word travels fast in this small company. Heard you got a little unexpected windfall drop into your account today. Nice break for a guy who's always scraping by. But remember this, Lynn, easy money never comes without strings attached. Nothing in this world is free." Lynn's head snapped upward, his throat tightening with sharp alarm. "How do you know about that transfer?" "It only happened this morning." Jason tapped a finger lightly to his temple, his grin curving into a sly, predatory smirk, the look of a cat watching a mouse stumble blindly into a carefully laid snare. Thin walls, loose lips. "This place doesn't keep secrets long. Now run along. Mrs. Shaw's waiting for you." The standalone warehouse building sat directly behind the main office, a squat, two-story industrial structure with high, dusty windows and concrete floors perpetually coated in fine construction dust. The first floor was crammed floor to ceiling with stacked tile pallets, bathroom fixture samples, plumbing hardware, and construction adhesives. The air thick with particulate matter that swirled into glowing golden clouds whenever sunlight slanted through the high glass panes. The entire space smelled of fresh cement, ceramic glaze, and dry, stagnant air, the familiar scent of Lynn's daily life for 4 straight years. Mrs. Shaw stood on the second floor shelving level, a leather-bound inventory clipboard clutched in one hand. Gary Bennett, the aging senior warehouse lead, hovering quietly at her elbow. In her early 50s, she wore plain cropped gray hair, a faded company work uniform, and scuffed non-slip safety shoes, looking far more like a seasoned floor worker than the powerful financial executive who controlled the company's entire budget and operational spending. She did not look up as Lynn panted up the metal stairs, her gaze fixed intently on the edge of a premium tile crate, checking for chips, scratches, or shipping damage with meticulous precision. "Took you long enough," she said flatly, her tone calm and unrushed, no trace of surprise or curiosity. "What's got you running around like a spooked deer today?" "Mrs. Shaw, $14,000 was deposited into my personal account this morning," Lynn rushed out, his words tumbling over each other in his urgent need for clarity. "It's a corporate transfer from Bright Horizons' official business account. It's not mine. I need to process a full refund immediately. Please tell me what official procedure I need to follow." Mrs. Shaw finally lifted her head, sliding her reading glasses down the bridge of her nose to fix him with a steady, unblinking gaze. There was no shock, no confusion, no concern in her dark eyes, only quiet, unshakable composure. That total lack of reaction was far more terrifying than any anger or confusion could have been. "I know," she said simply, her tone unchanging. "It's a system error, right?" Lynn pressed, desperation edging into his voice. "A misdirected transfer? I'll send every penny back today before any issues arise." Mrs. Shaw handed the inventory clipboard to Gary with a silent nod, dismissing him entirely. The older man, a lifelong company employee with decades of experience reading office dynamics, did not hesitate, grabbing the board and descending the stairs without a single word. In an instant, the second-floor warehouse fell into complete silence, save for the faint, high-pitched hum of the overhead fluorescent lights, a constant, thrumming noise that amplified every tense second between them. "You've been with this company for years now, haven't you, Lynn?" Mrs. Shaw shifted into a soft, conversational tone that felt infinitely more dangerous than outright hostility. "I remember your first day fresh off a construction job site. You couldn't tell a porcelain tile from a ceramic one, had no warehouse experience, no office skills. Mr. Carter kept you on because you worked harder than anyone else here. No complaints, no cutting corners, no calling out sick. You've always been a steady, reliable worker." "Yes, ma'am," Lynn replied automatically, straightening his shoulders, his mind racing to connect her casual nostalgia to the mysterious $14,000 deposit. "We all know your situation," she continued, her gaze steady and unflinching, laying every one of his hidden struggles bare without malice, but with total, unsparing clarity. "Your mother's recurring medical issues, the mounting hospital bills, the loans you've taken out just to cover rent and groceries. You carry your entire family's burden alone. No one talks about it openly, but everyone in management sees it. This is a small company. We notice our employees' hardships." Lynn's throat went dry, a hot flush of humiliation creeping up his neck and cheeks. He had spent years hiding his financial instability, embarrassed by his stagnant wages, his mounting debt, his inability to pull his family out of poverty. He had thought his private struggles were his alone, concealed behind his quiet, diligent work ethic. But now he realized the entire management team had watched his slow, daily struggle all along, studying his poverty like a quiet spectacle. "What does my personal situation have to do with this large deposit?" he asked tightly, struggling to keep the shame out of his voice. Mrs. Shaw paused for a long, weighted moment, her quiet words landing like a heavy stone dropping into still water. That $14,000 is a special employee hardship grant, personally approved by Mr. Carter himself. A member of staff brought your situation to his attention, told him how bravely you fought to support your family alone through endless medical crises. Mr. Carter is a generous man. He wanted to offer you substantial support to ease your burdens. A hardship grant. $14,000. Lynn's mind erupted with unshakable disbelief. In 4 years of employment, he had never once seen or heard of a company hardship grant program. The annual holiday employee bonus never exceeded $300. The company had never offered financial aid exceeding $1,000 for any employee emergency. $14,000 was nearly 3 times his total annual income, an absurd, unprecedented sum for a low-level warehouse associate. No small local construction firm would ever distribute that kind of money as charitable goodwill, not without strict paperwork, public announcements, and official policy backing it up. "Who submitted the request on my behalf?" he demanded, his tone sharp with suspicion. "Who spoke to Mr. Carter about me?" Mrs. Shaw ignored his question entirely, her expression softening into gentle pity, a look that made his skin crawl with helpless humiliation. "Take the money, Lynn. It's a no-strings kindness from the company. No repayment required, no extra work assigned, no changes to your role. You carry on exactly as you have been. Prying into who helped you will only spoil the goodwill of the gesture. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth." Every word was polished, reasonable, socially unassailable. Yet every syllable wrapped tighter around his chest, weaving a suffocating cocoon of obligation and silence. Chloe's knowing laugh, Jason's veiled warning, Mrs. Shaw's patronizing kindness, everyone in the building spoke in careful circles. Everyone expected him to be docile, grateful, and quiet. Everyone knew the truth except him. "I sincerely appreciate the company's concern for my family's struggles," Lynn said, his voice quiet but unwavering, steel threading through every syllable. "But I cannot accept a 5-figure sum of company money with no formal policy, no written application, no official approval signature, and no public record of this grant program. I want to follow all official channels to refund this money immediately. If a legitimate hardship grant program exists, I will complete every required document properly and legally." Mrs. Shaw's brows twitched downward, the faint tell of irritation cracking her decades-practiced calm. She exhaled a slow, weary sigh, thin and sharp in the empty warehouse air. "You're still young and stubborn, Lynn. Some things are far better left unexamined. The company went out of its way to help you in your darkest hour. Refusing this kindness is insulting to everyone who advocated for you." "Kindness does not require secrecy," Lynn countered firmly. "I will not accept unknown, unaccountable funds." Mrs. Shaw stared at him for a long, unblinking stretch, the overhead fluorescent light flickering twice above their heads in the heavy, charged silence. Finally, she nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Fine. I will process your full refund paperwork. But think very carefully before you finalize this choice. Some decisions, once made, can never be undone. There is no going back." She turned toward the metal stairs, her leather shoes clicking sharply against the concrete floor, the sound echoing hollowly through the empty warehouse. Pausing at the landing, she glanced back over her shoulder, her voice dropping to a near whisper, a quiet, critical clue hidden in her warning. "Look into the upcoming sales department restructuring and personnel adjustments. You'll find your answers there." With that, she descended the stairs, leaving Lynn alone amid towering stacks of tile crates, his palms slick with cold sweat, every nerve in his body screaming that he had just rejected far more than a random financial grant. He had rejected a carefully negotiated trap laid specifically for him. For the next 3 days, Lynn operated in a state of hypervigilant, relentless obsession, digging tirelessly for the truth hidden behind the company's vague, suspicious gestures. He pulled aside Eva Miller, the young, inexperienced human resources coordinator fresh out of college, offering to treat her to lunch at the popular spicy hot pot shop down the street to coax unfiltered office gossip out of her. Eva was earnest, talkative, and terrible at keeping internal company secrets, spilling sensitive restructuring details freely over steaming broth and boiling meat. The entire sales team is getting overhauled, she explained, stirring chili oil through her noodles, completely oblivious to how critical her words were. Company revenue crashed hard in the first half of the year. Mr. Carter's been furious nonstop. Only 3 sales reps actually hit their quotas, everyone else just collects base pay and does the bare minimum. Jason's the nephew of William Carter, our sales director. William's fighting tooth and nail to keep his nephew employed, but the CEO is demanding deadweight get cut. Someone has to be laid off to justify keeping Jason on staff. What does sales restructuring have to do with the warehouse team? Lynn asked, his chest tightening with cold foreboding. Eva paused, realizing she'd slipped up, then shrugged carelessly and kept talking. The company's been planning to outsource the entire warehouse operation for months. Gary's retiring at the end of the quarter, so his spot's open. That leaves you and Colin. But Colin's the nephew of one of our biggest tile clients, completely untouchable. There's only one disposable warehouse employee left. Lynn's blood ran cold. He understood everything in that instant. He was the only staff member with no family connections, no client ties, no managerial protection, no office alliances. He was the easiest, most convenient sacrifice to clean up company dead weight and push through the warehouse outsourcing plan without pushback. What about a $14,000 company hardship grant? Lynn pressed. Everyone's acting like it's standard company policy, but I've never heard of it. Eva's eyes widened in pure shock. 14,000? That's impossible. Our maximum employee emergency assistance is $400. The only reason the company would drop that kind of random money in your account, she trailed off, then clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide with panic. I didn't say that. Forget I mentioned anything, Lynn. I could get fired for spilling internal plans. Lynn thanked her quietly, paid for the meal, and stepped back out into the blazing summer sunlight. The white-hot sun glared off the asphalt roads, turning the entire world bright and blurry, the air thick with sweltering heat and humidity. He pulled out a cigarette out of restless, exhausted habit. He never smoked regularly, only when his mind was spiraling into chaos, when the weight of hidden injustice pressed too hard to bear. The acrid smoke burned his throat, bitter and sharp, matching the harsh truth he had finally uncovered. There was no kindness, no charity, no accident. Every smile, every vague warning, every secret gesture had been part of a single, calculated plan to remove him quietly from his job. He pulled up his banking app once more, staring at the $14,000 balance still sitting untouched in his account, a clean, harmless numerical entry that was actually a finely crafted trap. Logically, he should have refunded it instantly. But Mrs. Shaw's haunting warning looped endlessly in his head. Some decisions, once made, can never be undone. What exactly had he lost the moment he refused their generosity? His work phone buzzed with an internal company message, sent from Lily Cooper, a quiet junior administrative assistant on the sales team. They had never exchanged more than a handful of casual greetings during inventory pickups, no personal rapport, no reason for private contact. Her single short message sent a jolt of sharp adrenaline through his system. I know exactly who ordered the $14,000 transfer and why. Can we meet tonight privately? It's critical for you. They met at 7 o'clock at a tiny, unmarked noodle shop tucked deep in a labyrinth of old residential alleys, far from the office crowds and prying eyes. The shop had no official signage, only a large iron soup pot simmering with broth out front and chipped folding plastic tables lined along the concrete sidewalk, a quiet, anonymous spot perfect for secret conversations. Lynn had already finished his beef noodle bowl by the time Lily arrived. She'd traded her neat office blouse and slacks for a faded cotton t-shirt and messy ponytail, shedding her polished professional persona entirely, looking younger, frilier, and far more vulnerable than she ever did behind her desk. She glanced frantically up and down the empty alley, checking for familiar faces or security cameras before sliding into the seat across from him, her voice low and urgent, barely audible over the distant hum of city traffic. I'm risking my job telling you this, Lynn. I'll keep it quick so no one finds out. Lin pushed a glass of free water toward her, leaning forward slightly, his expression serious and attentive. Go on. I need the truth. William Carter personally authorized the transfer, she said bluntly, no hesitation, no softening of the brutal truth. Jason Hayes came up with the entire scheme. They're trying to pay you off to resign voluntarily, no questions asked, no legal disputes. Why me? Lin's fingers tightened around the cold glass until his knuckles whitened with pressure. Because you're the weakest link, Lily replied, her tone unflinchingly honest, cruel in its simplicity. You have no connections, no protection, no leverage. You've worked flawlessly for 4 years with 0 disciplinary issues, but you have no one in management advocating for you. Legally, if they fire you outright without cause, they owe you standard N+1 severance, roughly $2,500 for your tenure. But they're terrified you'll file a formal labor arbitration claim. A public dispute would expose their secret warehouse outsourcing plan, delay the entire project, and embarrass William in front of the CEO. He can't afford that public disruption. So they give me $14,000 instead of the legal $2,500? Lin muttered, stunned by the audacity of the scheme. It's a bribe for your silence and your resignation, Lily explained, dipping a chopstick in water to trace slow circles on the chipped tabletop, mapping out the trap in plain sight. They label it a hardship grant to give you a false sense of gratitude, to make you accept the money without suspicion or pushback. Once you spend the funds, grow comfortable with the extra cash, they'll hand you a voluntary termination agreement. You'll sign it, officially resign, and the $14,000 becomes legally binding negotiated severance. No dispute, no arbitration, no public record of corporate misconduct. You disappear quietly, they outsource the warehouse without resistance, and William protects his nephew's job. I haven't signed any termination paperwork, Lin argued, his mind racing to process the full scope of the fraud. You won't need to sign anything for the trap to work, Lily said softly, defeated. Bank records are legal evidence. Arbitrators and labor boards only care about paper trails. You accept $14,000 in corporate funds, then resign weeks later. Everyone will assume it was a voluntary settlement. Your word against official financial documentation. You will lose any dispute before it even starts. Cold sweat flooded Lin's back, soaking through the thin fabric of his work shirt, a wave of horrified clarity crashing over him. The fake charity, the secret transfer, the vague managerial kindness, the lack of official paperwork, all of it was a premeditated, airtight scheme designed to strip him of his legal rights, his reputation, and his job without a single messy public conflict. He was not a recipient of corporate generosity. He was an obstacle to be quietly eliminated. Why are you telling me this? Lin asked, studying her tired, youthful face, the quiet weariness in her eyes far beyond her early 20s. Lily fell silent for a long moment, the shop's faddy old television droning with evening news footage in the background, a stray cat yowling softly in the shadowed alley behind them. She finally smiled, a bitter, exhausted curve of her lips, stripped of all hope. Because I'm next. The sales restructuring includes junior staff layoffs, too. I refused Jason's inappropriate out-of-town travel request last month. You know exactly what that meant. He's had it out for me ever since, waiting for a chance to push me out quietly. My own hardship grant trap is already being planned. I don't have your courage to fight back. I just wanted you to know the truth before they swallow you whole. She pulled cash from her pocket and set it on the table to cover her untouched noodle order, standing quickly to leave before she could be implicated further. Don't tell anyone I talked to you. That's the only help I can offer. She vanished into the dim alley shadows before Lin could reply, leaving him alone with his cold noodle broth and the full, crushing weight of the company's betrayal settling over him. There were no free gifts, no corporate goodwill, no accidental errors. Only carefully laid traps, designed to exploit the poor, the unconnected, the quiet workers who never made trouble, who never questioned authority, who never fought for themselves. The next morning, Lin reported to work exactly as usual, forcing himself through the monotonous warehouse routine he had repeated faithfully for 4 years, sorting shipping logs, stacking tile pallets, verifying product batch numbers. labeling outgoing orders for delivery. Every repetitive motion felt heavier than usual, every crate of ceramic tile a physical weight pressing down on his chest, every routine task a reminder of how easily his entire livelihood could be erased by powerful people with more money, more connections, more influence. During his lunch break, he visited the Human Resources Office, borrowing his official employment contract and social insurance documentation under the pretense of updating personal residency paperwork. Eva handed over the certified copies without a second glance, completely oblivious to his quiet, deliberate investigation. Lynn settled onto his threadbare warehouse nap recliner, spreading the legal documents out across the dusty metal table and studying every line with meticulous, painstaking focus. His employment contract had 8 months remaining before renewal. His monthly base salary was $336, with performance bonuses bringing his total monthly income to $500 flat. His social insurance was filed at the absolute minimum legal rate, no additional benefits, no raises in 4 years. For years and 3 months of continuous tenure meant his standard legal severance, if lawfully terminated, would equal roughly $2,500. They had offered him $14,000. More than 5 times his legal entitlement. It was excessive, deliberate, a blatant payoff for his silence and compliance. For most people drowning in medical debt, monthly rent, and daily living expenses, it would have been an irresistible lifeline. Accept the money, quit quietly, pay off every debt, and walk away with leftover cash to start fresh somewhere new. Logically, mathematically, it was an unbeatable, life-changing deal. But logic could never erase the burning, humiliating truth seared into his chest. They were not compensating him for lost work. They were buying him. Buying his obedience, his silence, his willingness to be discarded without complaint or resistance. They had looked at his poverty, his family's illness, his quiet desperation, and casually assigned a monetary value to his dignity, $14,000. Rage was not the dominant emotion swirling through him. It was profound, burning humiliation. Strangers in suits, with power and money and security, had judged his entire worth as a human being and a worker based solely on his lack of connections and his financial struggles. Why should he be grateful for being erased? Why should he accept money to surrender his legal rights? Why did poverty automatically disqualify him from fair treatment? Lynn pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had saved months prior, a contact he had never thought he would need. The line rang twice before a calm, professional female voice answered. Sarah Lynn Law Office, this is Sarah speaking. Ms. Lynn, it's Lynn Reed. I helped deliver your large tile shipment to your renovation site back in April. He had met Sarah Lynn earlier that summer. A licensed practicing attorney and local renovation company owner, she had ordered a bulk tile shipment when the company's delivery driver called out sick. Lynn had volunteered to drive the company's old delivery van after hours, hauling 2 tons of tile to her job site without charging extra labor fees. Impressed by his work ethic and honesty, she had handed him her business card, telling him to call anytime he needed legal assistance. I remember you well, Sarah said, her tone warm with recognition. What can I do for you today? Tile issue or legal trouble? Legal trouble, Lynn said flatly, his tone steady and resolute. I believe my company is deliberately setting me up for fraudulent termination. He laid out every single detail in full, unflinching clarity, the unexplained $14,000 corporate deposit, the fake hardship grant explanation, the hidden warehouse outsourcing plan, William and Jason's nepotistic office power, Lily's confidential warning, and Mrs. Shaw's veiled threats. Sarah listened silently throughout the entire recounting, only the faint scratch of her pen on legal paper audible through the phone line, her professional focus unwavering. What tangible evidence do you currently possess? She asked crisply once he finished speaking, shifting immediately into legal strategy mode. Full bank transfer records, official corporate deposit documentation, and a legally admissible audio recording of my conversation with Mrs. Shaw, where she confirms the funds were approved by upper management with no formal policy basis. Lynn listed precisely. The single-party consent recording is fully valid and admissible in state labor court, Sarah confirmed instantly. That's powerful evidence. You need 3 additional critical pieces of proof to build an ironclad case. First, internal company documentation verifying the warehouse outsourcing plan and pending layoffs. Second, official employment records proving William and Jason's familial nepotism and preferential treatment. Third, written proof that the company has never issued 5-figure hardship grants before, completely disproving their corporate charity defense. I can gather all of that within 3 days, Lin said firmly, his resolve hardening into unbreakable certainty. You need to understand the full stakes before you proceed, Sarah warned, her tone sharp and serious. Once you begin formal evidence collection and push back against management, there is no turning back. The company will retaliate aggressively. You will face months of unemployment during arbitration and litigation. They will file counterclaims accusing you of unlawful acceptance of corporate funds, attempting to paint you as greedy, ungrateful, and dishonest. You will be fighting senior corporate management entirely alone. Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed? Lin stared out the warehouse window at the dusty construction lot outside, every hidden injustice of the past 4 years flashing through his mind: the unappreciated labor, the quiet exploitation, the casual dismissal of his worth because he was poor and unconnected. If I stay quiet and take the money, they still fire me. The only difference is I lose my job and my dignity. Money can be earned again. My self-respect cannot. Sarah fell silent for a long beat, then replied with unwavering conviction. Very well. Collect every piece of evidence you can find. I will represent you pro bono for this entire labor dispute. We will fight for full, fair accountability. Over the next 3 days, Lin worked in absolute secrecy, gathering evidence piece by piece during lunch breaks and after hours when the office emptied out entirely. He sifted through archived human resource files, old management meeting minutes, and financial approval forms stored in the back office filing cabinets, Eva's casual trust granting him unrestricted access to restricted internal paperwork without a single question. On the 3rd day, he found the definitive smoking gun, official quarterly management meeting minutes dated 3 months prior, printed on branded company letterhead, signed by every senior executive. Meeting topic: Warehouse Operational Outsourcing Feasibility Review. Attendees: William Carter, Susan Shaw, Jason Hayes. Official verdict: full warehouse outsourcing approved for implementation within 6 months. William Carter to oversee operational transition and mandatory employee layoff resolution. Mandatory employee layoff resolution. For cold, clinical words that summed up his entire expendable existence at the company. He was not a valued employee. He was a problem to be resolved, a position to be eliminated, a loose end to be tied up quietly. He located Jason's official employee registration file next, the social relations section clearly listing William Carter as his maternal uncle, irrefutable written proof of the nepotism driving the entire layoff scheme. Jason was protected by family ties. Lin was sacrificed for those ties. The final, most damning piece of evidence stopped his breath cold in his throat. Buried in a stack of financial approval forms was a handwritten employee hardship grant application, dated 3 days before the mysterious deposit hit his account. The applicant name was listed as Lynn Reed, the official reason stated as severe family financial hardship due to parental chronic illness and emergency surgery. At the bottom of the page, a crudely forged signature, deliberately mimicking his own handwriting. They had not merely attempted to bribe him into silence. They had forged his legal signature to create fake official proof that he had voluntarily applied for the grant funds. If he had accepted the money and resigned quietly, he would have had zero legal recourse for justice. Any future dispute would be instantly dismissed by labor officials. Official company paperwork would prove he had begged for corporate charity, then quit voluntarily afterward. He would have been branded ungrateful, dishonest, and financially desperate for the rest of his local career, with no way to clear his name. Lin photographed the document carefully from multiple angles for evidentiary clarity, replaced the original form precisely in its file stack, and walked out of the storage room with ice running through his veins. This was no longer a misguided corporate favor or gray area layoff tactic. This was premeditated fraud, forgery, and illegal workplace manipulation. He compiled every photo, screenshot, and scanned document into a single organized evidentiary folder and sent the full archive to Sarah. Her reply was immediate, concise, and definitive. Evidence is comprehensive, authenticated, and ironclad. We have a guaranteed winnable case. Corporate retaliation began the very next morning. Lynn arrived at work at 7:30 a.m. sharp to find the entire warehouse lock replaced with a new keyed deadbolt, his employee access credentials permanently deactivated. Gary was gone, reassigned to temporary front office inventory work. A complete stranger in a brand new, crisp company uniform stood inside the warehouse space, systematically counting inventory pallets, his posture arrogant and entitled. Clearly, the outsourced replacement staff hired to take Lynn's job before he had any notification of restructuring. "You don't have access to this facility anymore," the new hire said, glancing up at Lynn with dismissive indifference. Company transferred all warehouse operations to external contracted staff effective immediately. "Your personal belongings are in that cardboard box by the entrance." Lynn walked slowly forward and lifted the cardboard box lid. Inside was every trivial personal item he had kept at his workspace over 4 years of loyal labor: a frayed measuring tape, worn canvas work gloves, a chipped stainless steel water bottle, and a tattered inventory notebook filled with his handwritten logs spanning years of perfect service. For years of early mornings, late nights, flawless inventory records, and uncomplaining hard work boiled down to a single beat-up cardboard box of worthless trinkets. He carried the box out of the warehouse, the cardboard warm from the blazing summer sun, his steps slow, steady, and unshaken despite the storm of anger and injustice raging inside him. He did not return to the main office to argue or beg for his job. He walked straight to his electric bike, secured the box to the rear rack, and rode directly to Sarah's downtown law office. Sarah's firm occupied a sleek, tidy suite in a modern downtown business tower, professional legal certificates framed neatly on the neutral walls, the space quiet, structured, and rigorously organized, a stark contrast to the chaotic, unethical underhandedness of Bright Horizons corporate culture. She reviewed every piece of evidence in person once more, cross-verifying dates, signatures, and corporate records, organizing the materials into a formal legal case file, and laying out every illegal violation with precise legal clarity. For distinct, provable labor law violations, she summarized crisply, tapping each categorized document in turn. Unilateral elimination of your official job position without prior written employee notification, forgery of your legal signature on official corporate documentation, fraudulent discretionary fund transfer to coerce involuntary resignation, and illegal physical lockout from your assigned workplace duties. Every single action violates state and federal labor protection statutes. "Can we win this case?" Lynn asked plainly, tired but resolute, ready to fight no matter the cost. "Absolutely," Sarah confirmed without hesitation. "But they will launch a vicious counterattack. Their primary defense will be accusing you of unlawful, intentional acceptance of $14,000 in unauthorized corporate funds, attempting to paint you as a dishonest employee who exploited company charity for personal gain. You must refund the full amount immediately through official, traceable corporate channels to completely eliminate this defense." "I'll do it right now." Lynn opened his mobile banking application on the spot and transferred the full $14,000 sum back to Bright Horizons' verified corporate account, typing an explicit, permanent payment memo, unauthorized erroneous corporate deposit, full voluntary refund of unapproved funds. He screenshot the official confirmation receipt, drafted a formal, time-stamped email addressed to the finance director, human resources manager, and company CEO, attaching the refund proof and a sworn written statement denying all unauthorized grant applications and forged documentation filed under his name. 10 minutes after the email sent, his phone rang. Mrs. Shaw's name flashed across the screen. "Lynn Reed," she said, her voice cold, sharp, and stripped of all pretense of kindness or goodwill. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I am returning unauthorized corporate funds I never applied for or accepted, Lin replied calmly, his tone steady and unprofessional hostility. Additionally, I am formally disputing the fraudulent hardship grant application filed under my name with a forged signature. This constitutes illegal corporate document forgery, and I demand a full internal investigation. Silence stretched taut on the line for several long, charged seconds, followed by a sharp, disdainful huff. Mrs. Shaw terminated the call without another word, the abrupt end of the line signaling the official start of corporate warfare. The next 2 weeks were the most grueling, emotionally exhausting period of Lin's adult life. The company launched every retaliatory tactic in their playbook to break his resolve. First, they issued a formal written disciplinary warning to his personal email, falsely accusing him of unapproved workplace absences and repeated job abandonment, framing their illegal lockout as his voluntary refusal to work. Lin responded with a formal, fully documented rebuttal, attaching 4 years of unbroken clock-in records, witness statements from delivery drivers and visiting clients, and warehouse security camera timestamps proving perfect. Consistent attendance up until his illegal lockout. Every false accusation was systematically dismantled with irrefutable proof. Days later, William Carter summoned him to a formal disciplinary board meeting, seating himself behind a massive executive desk with the Human Resources Director and Mrs. Shaw flanking him, creating an intimidating 3-on-1 interrogation dynamic designed to pressure him into submission. Lin, this company has treated you with nothing but compassion and generosity, William began, his tone patronizing and stern, the practiced authority of a senior executive accustomed to unchallenged control over his subordinates. We learned of your family's devastating medical hardships and donated $14,000 in pure charitable goodwill to support you. Instead of gratitude, you accuse us of fraud and misconduct. This is unforgivable ingratitude and unprofessional conduct. With all due respect, Mr. Carter, Lin replied evenly, standing tall and unyielding before the executive team. The official Bright Horizon Employee Handbook contains 0 provisions for 5-figure discretionary hardship grants. No formal application process exists, no approval guidelines were followed, no public policy authorizes this expenditure, and no other employee has ever received similar support. There is no legitimate corporate basis for this supposed charitable donation. William's smug, confident smile faltered for the first time. Furthermore, Lin continued, sliding a printed forensic handwriting analysis report across the conference table. I have obtained official professional verification confirming the signature on the hardship grant application filed under my name is forged and unauthorized. I never submitted any financial assistance request of this magnitude. I demand a full, public internal investigation to identify the staff member responsible for forging my legal signature on official company documents. The room descended into dead, suffocating silence. Mrs. Shaw's face paled noticeably, her practiced composure cracking completely. The Human Resources Director stared fixedly at his desk paperwork, refusing to make eye contact or engage in the conversation. William's eyes hardened with unmasked fury, his polished corporate demeanor crumbling into naked anger. You intend to burn every bridge with the company that supported you in your darkest hour? He asked coldly, his voice sharp with menace. I intend to uphold basic workplace fairness and my personal integrity, Lin answered firmly. I have worked 4 years of flawless, error-free service for this company. If corporate restructuring requires legitimate layoffs, I will accept legal, standard severance and formal termination proceedings without dispute. I will not accept fraudulent bribes disguised as charity to force my silent, wrongful dismissal. Lin stood slowly, straightening his shoulders, his posture unshakable. If the company refuses to resolve this matter fairly and transparently, I will submit all evidentiary documentation to the State Labor Inspection Bureau and file formal civil litigation. I possess proof of illegal workplace restructuring, nepotistic preferential treatment, and official corporate forgery. I will pursue full legal accountability for every violation. He turned and walked out of the conference room with steady, unhurried steps, his back rigid with resolve. As he passed the hallway, he spotted Jason leaning against the wall smoking a cigarette, watching him with sharp, assessing eyes, his expression unreadable. "You're brave, Lynn," Jason said, flicking ash onto the hallway floor. "But bravery doesn't win against corporate power. What real odds do you think you have against the entire company?" "Enough to win back my name and my dignity," Lynn replied, walking past him without a second glance. 3 weeks later, the company's CEO, Mr. Carter, personally called Lynn to arrange a private, off-the-record settlement meeting, cutting out William, Jason, and Mrs. Shaw entirely to avoid further scandal. The second conference room meeting was stripped of all hostile intimidation tactics, populated only by the CEO, the company's corporate legal counsel, and the human resources director. The CEO's demeanor was weary, resigned, and unexpectedly respectful, fully aware of the ironclad case Lynn and Sarah had built and the public scandal a formal lawsuit would bring to the company's reputation. "I have fully reviewed all internal evidence, witness statements, and legal documentation," the CEO said without preamble. William Carter's actions were unauthorized, unethical, and illegal. The company is prepared to offer a fair, formal settlement to resolve this dispute without public litigation. The official settlement terms were clear, transparent, and fully corrective of all wrongful conduct. The company formally rescinded all false absenteeism warnings and disciplinary claims, issuing an official internal retraction of all wrongful allegations. Both parties agreed to voluntary formal employment termination, eliminating any formal termination record on Lynn's professional file. The company paid enhanced severance of 3 additional months of wages on top of standard legal compensation, totaling $3,500 in full, final settlement. An official company-wide internal investigation was launched into the forged signature incident, with formal disciplinary action enforced against all responsible staff. Most critically, the company agreed to issue a company-wide public email clarifying that the hardship grant application bearing Lynn's signature was fraudulent and unauthorized, formally clearing his name to every current employee. Lynn's only final condition was simple and unnegotiable. "I require public clarification, not private settlement. I want every employee at this company to know I never applied for those funds, never accepted a bribe, and never abandoned my job voluntarily. I will not carry a false reputation for dishonesty." The CEO consulted briefly with legal counsel, then nodded in full agreement. "Your request is reasonable. We will comply fully." 2 weeks later, every employee at Bright Horizon Building Materials received a mass internal email, formal and unflinching in its clarity. The message stated officially that the financial hardship grant application submitted under former warehouse employee Lynn Reed's name contained a forged, unauthorized signature, filed without the employee's knowledge or consent. The $14,000 discretionary transfer was confirmed as an unauthorized internal transaction, fully refunded, and officially voided. The company formally exonerated Lynn Reed of all wrongdoing, apologized for internal procedural failures, and confirmed disciplinary action against responsible staff members. Lynn read the email slowly from his small rented apartment, fresh off an overnight shift at his new logistics warehouse job. His new employer was a former Bright Horizon client who had witnessed his diligent work ethic firsthand for years, offering him higher pay, consistent hours, respectful treatment, and zero toxic office politics. The work was still physical, still tiring, still ordinary, but it was fair, honest, and dignified. He closed his laptop and walked to his apartment window, staring out at the cramped urban skyline, tangled power lines crisscrossing the sunset sky above crowded residential rooftops. The faint smell of neighborhood cooking oil drifted through the cracked window screen, the distant hum of city traffic and street vendor chatter mixing into the loud, ordinary soundtrack of regular working-class life. He had heard full updates from former coworkers in the weeks since his departure. Lily had resigned from Bright Horizon shortly after the settlement, accepting an administrative position at a reputable local firm with higher pay and a healthy workplace culture, escaping Jason's harassment entirely. William Carter was permanently stripped of his sales director title and managerial authority, demoted to a junior field sales role with no staff oversight. Jason lost his job entirely. His nepotistic protection dissolved the moment his uncle fell from power, left unemployed and blacklisted in the local construction industry after the public scandal. Mrs. Shaw remained employed at the company, but lost her untouchable reputation as the firm's most powerful insider. Her decades of unchallenged authority permanently cracked and questioned by every staff member. She had submitted early retirement paperwork, finally conceding her damaged credibility. Lynn felt no hatred, no bitterness, no desire for revenge. Revenge required energy. He needed to build a better life for himself and his family. He felt only quiet relief, relief that truth had prevailed, that injustice had been corrected, that his name had been fully restored. He picked up his chipped stainless steel water bottle, the trivial work item he had kept from his old warehouse box, scuffed and worn from 4 years of daily use. It was not valuable, not glamorous, not impressive. But it was his earned honestly, kept honestly, never bought, bartered, or compromised away. He twisted off the cap and drank cold water slowly, the plain, clean taste settling calmly in his chest, soothing the last lingering tension of months of stress and struggle. His phone buzzed with a warm voice message from his mother, gentle and familiar as always, checking in after his long work shift. "Hi, baby, did you eat dinner? Are you overworking yourself again?" Lynn pressed the voice record button and smiled softly, genuinely at peace for the first time in months. "I already ate, Mom. Work's good, not tiring at all. I'm doing really well, don't worry about me." He sent the message and slipped his phone into his pocket as night fell fully over the city, streetlights flickering on one by one, gilding the crowded neighborhood streets in warm golden light. The $14,000 trap had sat in his account for exactly 7 days. 7 days of temptation, humiliation, pressure, and threat. 7 days where powerful people had tried to buy his silence, buy his resignation, buy his dignity for a price they deemed fitting for a poor, unconnected working man. He had refused. He had walked away with $3,500 in legal, earned severance, and a fully cleared name. Mathematically, it was an unequal trade, 14,000 sacrificed for a quarter of the value. But numbers could never calculate the immeasurable value of self-respect. Money could always be earned again, lost again, replaced again. A good name, once stolen and tarnished, was nearly impossible to reclaim. He had bought back his identity, his integrity, his right to be seen as a hardworking, honest man, not a disposable poor person whose dignity could be purchased with a single corporate transfer. His life remained hard. Rent still loomed every month. Old medical debts still required slow, steady repayment. Long physical work hours still left him tired and worn at the end of every day. Ordinary working-class struggles had not vanished with his legal victory. But one thing had changed forever. No one would ever again get to place a fake signature on his life. No one would ever get to decide his worth for him. No one would ever get to buy his silence, his compliance, or his dignity with easy money. He closed the window against the cool evening breeze, sat down at his small wooden desk, and opened his logistics industry textbook, flipping to the dog-eared page where he had left off studying days before. A worn pencil and half-used eraser sat beside the book, small symbols of steady, quiet progress and self-improvement.